Welcome to Season 2 of Ventures and Visionaries, Episode 15. You're not stuck, you're invisible. Why performance alone won't get you promoted. This podcast is about vision, entrepreneurship, and innovation. We discuss the lessons and challenges we continue to face so we can uncover opportunities today and tomorrow. I'm your host, Mordy Hackel. Welcome to the show. Our guest today is Dr. Stephanie Hills, a former Fortune 500 technology executive turned leadership strategist and executive coach. With leadership experience at companies like NCR, Cisco Systems, and Scientific Atlanta, she spent decades operating inside complex enterprise environments, leading teams, scaling systems, and navigating high-stakes transformation. Today, she works with mid to senior level technology leaders to help them increase visibility, accelerate promotion, and successfully pivot into higher impact roles. As the creator of the Career Freedom Accelerator framework, Dr. Hills focuses on the practical side of leadership growth, blending real-world operator experience with coaching to help professionals stay relevant, confident, and competitive in a rapidly evolving landscape shaped by AI and organizational change. Stephanie, how are you today?
I am fantastic, Morty, and what a way to introduce me. Thank you so much.
Look at that. It's the least I can do.
Right?
Yes.
So happy to be here.
Well, thank you so much. You're very, very kind to be on the show, and I'm very much looking forward to our chat today. And, I think one of the things that in our pre-conversation, one of the things that was very relevant to this conversation is a little bit about your background and how you pivoted from being that leader into some of the things that we're talking about. So maybe just I gave an introduction, but maybe in your own words, share a little bit more about, where you came from and what's your eye to the future look like.
Well, Morty, I actually went from researcher to engineer to tech exec to executive coach. So it's been a very broad journey.
Interesting. I hear that.
I got my PhD in applied mathematics, software engineering, and I did research for NASA for a while before I pivoted into the corporate world. And I had a great opportunity to lead some amazing initiatives and very big programs and projects, and that's what really grew me into who I was. I reached a level where, even though I was being very successful where I realized that my biggest satisfaction was helping those on my team, mentoring those engineers, helping others succeed. And so I pivoted out of the corporate world and became an executive coach because I knew that I was just a few steps ahead of others in their journey and that I could help them accelerate, hence the Career Freedom Accelerator, or I could really help them jumpstart their career, their leadership from the experience and the things that I had gained over 25 plus years in Fortune 500 tech companies.
Yeah, that's a great story. I personally love the pivot from researcher and a PhD in applied math. Like, I think that's just the logic and the rigor that you develop in that world is probably second to none, I would think. And probably, I would imagine calculus was about as far as I went. So, I was going to just say, like, how do you think like those research skills have benefited you in your career, and where has that taken you in ways that perhaps you would not have anticipated when you were studying?
Well, I'll tell you a story, Morty, if I may.
Please.
When I was doing research at NASA Langley, and I was writing software for the supercomputers, and I had a software bug that took me months to solve. And I know that sounds crazy, but it taught me persistence, and it also gave me my analytical thinking and my problem-solving skills. And I say the strongest thing is, as a researcher, as an engineer, having those problem-solving skills is what makes you successful as an executive, is what makes you successful as an executive coach, because you can then solve the problems and find solutions for your clients.
Yeah, and I think that what you're saying is very, very true, because at least what I'm seeing in the world today is, from the time that the microwave allowed us to warm up food in 2 minutes, we're now no longer ready to cook and be patient. So the tenacity of solving a problem that takes months to solve. I was talking to somebody else, as another guest was talking about a problem that needs a 10-year horizon. I thought was an interesting way to frame the issue. Sounds exactly like what you're saying.
Absolutely. I love that second story because having those analytical skills, being that problem solver, and carrying that into every area of your life is really what allows you to be successful.
Yeah, and I think that the success is very interesting. And some of us who are probably more interested in putting our heads down and just getting so much work done. One of the things that you and I talk about a little bit is the idea of doing the work and positioning yourself in a slightly more visible way. Can you maybe speak a little bit more about how operators can transform themselves into leaders and not be so invisible?
Yes, absolutely. So first I'll give you an entrepreneur perspective, and then I'll tell you how people in their careers need to, it's their obligation, their responsibility to make themselves more visible. So you and I spoke when I first became an entrepreneur and started my own business. I was heads down with those mundane tasks, focusing on that. And I had no time for myself, no time for my clients. And I realized that I really needed to systemize and simplify and focus on what worked so that I could be that heads up operator, right? As you put it, that productive owner, right? And by doing that, I gave me the opportunity to make myself more visible in the community with my clients and with others. And pivoting to in your career, people think that their performance is enough. Even if I am exceeds expectations, I'll get promoted. That's good enough. In my career, I kept getting passed by. I was the top performer that they kept asking more and more and more, and I was getting more burnout. And then I realized it's not just my performance, as I spoke a moment ago. It's my responsibility to make myself visible so I can be the role model for others to make themselves visible. And Morty, we spoke about this framework, the PI, performance, image, and exposure. Performance being that's your work, right? The impact that you're making in the company. And second is your image. How do others perceive you? You might believe that's your role, your identity, and that people perceive you in a certain way. And so it's so important that you really understand how you are showing up. And then exposure is who is seeing you, where are you being seen? And so you have to address all three of those so that you go from being overlooked to recognized, so from undervalued to rewarded, right? And I tell people that by doing this, you can really get that advancement in your career.
I think that's very, very true. And I appreciate everything that you're saying. And I'll add maybe a small little detail here, which I thought was super interesting. When I was a young kid and first was starting in the industry, I was getting a ride when I was working over at the NBA and on their IT team by the CIO at the time. So she gave me a ride from office A to office B. And in that conversation, she shared with me an interesting tidbit that her mentor shared with her. And that was you have to raise the people who are beneath you so that you become replaceable. And that, I think, is
Yes.
such a scary moment for so many of us, because if I make myself indispensable, I think that's actually better. But if I am dispensable, then I can get promoted. But if I'm indispensable, well, now I've made myself, for all intents and purposes, I've created my own glass cage.
Right. I tell others that a successful leader
Mhm.
is where the people on their team get promoted around and above them. That means that you are being that servant leader, you are giving that
Mm.
trusted environment, and you are allowing them to grow and succeed.
You've used an expression that I love, and that is servant leader. And I'd love to ask your perspective on that phrase, and also talk a little bit for me on how you coach your clients to balance humility and visibility. Because, I
That's
think
a
that,
challenge.
yeah, exactly. Go for it.
Okay, servant leadership is someone who uh, is a service to the team, to their peers, to the customer, and to the executives above them or the leadership. So it's a 360 servant. And I tell you that you being helpful and you having that service mindset, it not only serves a benefit for those around you because it helps them and it makes them feel safe and trusted, but it also gives you a benefit because it makes you feel valued knowing that you can help others. And I tell people, even in their career, that's one of the secrets to become visible. If you're on a team and you're the one who's helping others, or if a customer has an issue and you're the one helping that customer. So if you have, that's a simple way to offer help or to give help or to be that problem solver so that you can remain humble and with that humility. And I'll just transition into humility versus visibility. So I used to think that if I was visible, if I put myself out there, that I was being selfish, that I was being egotistical, right? That I didn't have that humility. But I will tell you that there are ways that you can do this very simple. I already gave you one, which was having that servant leader mindset by helping others, right? The other one is, having those conversations with mentors and peers and leaders and celebrating the team's wins, right? In a humble way. Celebration is a great way where you pull people in without having that selfish mindset. So you can balance humility with visibility, and you need to, right?
Yeah, 100%. Do you think that, and again, based on the research that I've read, I won't share my opinion as of yet, but what do you think that women suffer from this differently than men do?
Uh, in an honest and transparent way, from my experience, I think that women do have a different leadership experience than men. We as women, we must own our careers and we must own our destinies and own our successes, and that's a great thing, just as a man does. But I think that women are perceived in a different way. Like women, that our salaries are a little bit lower. There's words like aggressive versus assertive, with a man versus how a woman is viewed that. And so I think that it's important that as a woman, I say, okay, I know what this perception is, and I own it, and I must act in that environment. I must accept my environment and figure out a way to work around or overcome those obstacles.
Yeah, and it's, for me, this is very much close to my heart because obviously I have a couple of kids who are women entering the career force. So I like asking questions because it helps me hopefully be a better dad and as a husband to a woman who also has a career. So, I'm always interested in knowing, and it's an experience that I cannot have. So thank you so much for sharing. And let's take this a little bit directly into what you had said before about owning yourself, whether, I guess, if it's a young woman getting into a career, a woman who's, an executive is feeling boxed in, or, anybody, frankly, men also have, I would think, similar issues, probably not exactly the same, but similar issues. So, what are the kinds of things that create that invisibility when you have your nose down and you're doing what you're doing? Like, is it an energy? Is it something else? Like why are you just not, why are people not being seen today?
Because first of all, it's easy. It's easy to sit behind your desk and do your work and believe that you are being successful, right? Because that's where your comfort zone is. Second, I think that things are moving so fast paced that work gets more visibility than people in many instances. And so it is so important that we have those connections and those relationships. And it's not just about going to meetings, but it's about building those relationships, taking that time for those lunches, taking those times to reach out to people, taking that time to schedule a coffee with like a cross-functional peer. So it's easy to be heads down, it's easy to be in your comfort zone. You just need to lift your head up and take those steps forward.
That's interesting. I think that's so insightful, and it's really the little things. Like you said, I've seen that in my career as well. If I'm reaching out to people that I would consider either mentors, they almost always are interested in taking my call and grabbing a coffee, or peers and similar, sometimes it's clients as well. Like, how else do you forge relationships?
Absolutely. Life is, I tell my sons and my clients that, life is all about relationships. Relationships is what gives you the true satisfaction. Relationships is what gives you the visibility in your career. Relationships give you the opportunity to really move forward and have that web, right, that allows you to be successful.
Yeah, the web is not to be underestimated. And frankly, it is, I think, the source of strength in so much of our own humanity in today's world. Because, and maybe here we pivot into AI for a minute. Um, you know, I'm finding so many interesting use cases where AI can be really a massive force multiplier in the work that I do. And yet there's an enormous amount of reticence and fear, and just curious, like, what are your clients seeing? What are you seeing? What do you think? Where does you think this is going to all go? And what would you recommend for both young people and people in the middle of their career to do, based on the experiences that you've had? I know I said like 27 things, so giving you a lot of material to work with.
Well, Morty, that is a loaded yet a great question, because when I started coaching, I wasn't even coaching in the AI space. And then I realized from my clients that AI was so relevant. And it's so, you think that if you look at the fears or the pain points, professionals have the fear that AI is going to replace them.
Mhm.
But what I teach my clients is that there's actually the World Economic Forum. It came out with a report in 2025 that said that the top 10 skills, only one of them is AI, right? For when it's projecting out to what's going to happen by 2030, okay? And then, yes, we're going to lose about 92 million jobs, but we're going to gain 170 million, right? That's a net of what? 78 million jobs. And people have to position themselves to realize that AI is your career advantage. AI is your amplifier. AI is your multiplier. AI is your accelerator. And it's what can really move you forward. And the other piece I get from people, you gave me a multi-tiered question, so I'll give you a multi-tiered response, right?
Please.
And that is that, you know, you have so much of an opportunity to learn. And so many people, the second thing beyond the fear that it's going to replace me is the overwhelm. I hear all the time, daily, I don't have enough time. I can't keep up. The tools are changing. There's so much. I'm even on the calls with senior executives who don't have a big AI background, and they're saying, I don't know what to do. And what I tell everyone is, I say, start small. 1% improvement each day gives you 3,700% improvement over the year. Spend 30 minutes a day on AI. Spend an hour every day. Make that commitment to yourself. Make that investment. And then don't tackle everything. I don't know all the tools, right? You need to choose that one task in your job, in your business, for your life that's the most important, the most difficult, the most overwhelming, the thing that you've been putting off, right? And you automate that one thing and you learn that one tool. And then I get, well, I don't know how to do that. Well, guess what, Morty? All you have to do is ask AI how to do it, and it'll tell you, right? So I don't go and build my automations on my own. I ask AI how to do it.
I think that's so, so, so smart. Not only trying to not figure it out on yourself by yourself, but leveraging the tools to help break it down into a system that's digestible and, inculcatable, and 3,700% is the beauty of compound interest. I like that. We threw that in
And
there.
here's,
Go ahead. Sorry.
well, this is something that is so very important right now, and that is the human in the loop. I don't throw things out the window or to AI and say, do it, and I'm done, right? Because so many of us have hallucinations from AI, or it's not
Yeah.
exactly what we want, or maybe the governance isn't there. So it's so important that we have those points in the workflow where we do step in and we do put in our judgment and our decision making and maybe tweak it, or maybe we make use it for our own decision making, right? But we're still the human in the loop. We're the orchestrator. I like to say that, think of it is that you have all these agents running for you in the background doing these mundane tasks that made you heads down, right? And now you have these agents where you're the orchestrator, the conductor, so that you can now free yourself up as your tasks are working in the background to get things done. Can I give you an example of a daily activity for me with that? Do you think that'd be beneficial?
100%. I was going to ask you to share some stories and some examples. So you beat me to it. I like that.
Great minds think alike, Morty.
That's it.
So
Speak for yourself.
I
My
might
mind is not so great, but that's okay.
so I might have AI co-work going on in the background, right? So I'll give it a task or a skill, right, where maybe it's doing something for a particular client of mine, or and then I'll have another tab open where maybe it's developing a new course for me. And this is all in one day, and then maybe I might have one, coming up with a strategy for some content, right? And all that's running in the background, because and in the meantime I'm here on my other laptop, right? And I am doing other I have automations working in the background doing my emails and meetings and summarizing all of that. I get daily AI summaries, or maybe I might be in the chat having a conversation. So I'm being a conductor with all of these different tools at my disposal.
So interesting. We used to think about one person, one laptop. Um, and now it sounds like knowledge workers who are leveraging tools like AI. And I'm not going to even get into the whole security around the Anthropic tools that literally can do things on my behalf. But that's part of my day job. And while that may be interesting to me, I don't know how many people are interested in the security around some of these tools. But regardless, what's so fascinating here is the fact that this is exactly the example that you're talking about from the World Economic Forum, right? So, on the one hand, I am one person, but I am trying to do multiple things and orchestrate multiple things. And now, rather than having one machine doing one thing, I can have a bunch of computers doing things in parallel, and those agents now in parallel. And that's really truly creating the false multiplier. I think that's a brilliant way of explaining this.
And the other thing is that these things, these products that it's creating, or these workflows, it would take me hours, if not days, to create some of these things.
Yeah. It's so
So it's
interesting.
not just, yeah, I believe that it's not just saving us time, but it's improving the quality of our work. And it's allowing me to serve my clients better.
Yeah. I always wonder about these things. I'll take this back to a Malcolm Gladwell article that I read years ago that talked about how parents years ago used to chastise their children for playing video games, saying that it was going to rot their brain. And it turns out that the kids that were really good at video games turned out to be the best arthroscopic surgeons. So I think it's just interesting because like what you're saying over here is exactly that. Like we don't really yet know how this is going to ultimately play itself out. But years ago, if you wanted to play, let's go back to the orchestra analogy, so to speak. If I wanted to play an instrument, I had to invest years to try and master that instrument. But even so, I could not really play in an orchestra without the conductor. And now, perhaps in the world of business, if I can take this and extrapolate that out, maybe I don't really need to know how to play the violin all that well, but I have a tool that does violin like stuff. And I'm bringing all these things together. And now the human brain, with its creativity and energetic abilities, has the ability to truly allow people to flourish. I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. Sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, absolutely allow people to flourish. Sometimes pre-AI, I would say, oh, I've got this task to do, and I wouldn't want to do it, right? It would be overwhelming. And just the other day, I wanted to have a way to take my client intake form and integrate that with my client management system and then send an email out to the new client who signed up, right? And so I asked Gemini to create me a N8N, that's the tool, prompt, and I put it in that workflow automation, and it did it for me in like 30 minutes. So I was actually excited. It was fun. You talk about those video games. AI can be fun, right? When
Yeah.
you're generating these things and solving these problems and you have these outcomes, it's like, wow, and it's something that satisfaction, that game playing that really wasn't there before. So not only are you an orchestrator, but you get to play games too.
Wow, an orchestrator at play. It sounds like we are literally going back
Right.
to almost like a childlike level of joy that can be found back at work instead of being, a person on an assembly line screwing in a bolt for 40 years.
Yeah, so let me ask you a question.
No.
Do you enjoy being in Excel, like trying to figure out those formulas that you have, like, oh my gosh, and just bored and not having the answers? Or do you enjoy, like, saying, asking a tool that you have inside of Excel, asking it to do it for you, and then you get a beautiful dashboard? That's exciting. Or
So
maybe
I,
that's the engineer in me.
so I think you're right, but I also think that perspective is rare. Meaning, in my experience with engineers, they're really very distinct personality types.
Yes.
One is the very task oriented and not really focused on how this task how this task plugs into the rest of the tapestry. And then there are other people who are really thinking a little bit more in terms of how do I move the chess pieces around the board and what really needs to happen, what needs to happen before other things versus after other things. I often find that those people might not be nearly as diligent about accomplishing tasks because they're more concerned with the actual movement of the chess pieces rather than the doing of the thing. And I often wonder how this is going to, or are we going to use AI to augment some of our weaknesses, or are we going to go in the other direction and just become a little bit more atrophied, if you will? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that you raise a really good point, and it's forcing us, instead of being task oriented, to put that system thinking in place, right? You called it a chessboard with the chess pieces, and you can't look at a single tool or a single task or a single outcome. You have to look at the whole system. And you talk about us being atrophied. I again challenge you and say it's a different way of thinking, right? By having that system level focus, that orchestrator focus, that game level focus, right? Then that is a different way that our own brain, that those new neural networks are firing with our own brains, creating those new paths and a new way of thinking.
Which is perhaps one can argue, at least today, not something that AI can do because all it is predicting what was known in the past.
Yes. Yes,
So,
exactly.
so is that in fact, in your mind, the unique advantage of humans? Or is there something else that you think also makes us special and separates us out a little bit?
I think our soft skills, I think our emotions, I think our judgment, I think our relationships and our connections, right? And AI gives us the opportunity to focus more on those relationships and connections. Again, you're raising everything up a layer to what really matters to us, to
Huh.
what we should really focus on. So it's not just about, the capabilities. It's about those soft skills. It's about those emotions. It's about those human relations. It's about that judgment and decision making.
What kind of exercises can leaders do other than, obviously educating themselves to incorporate some of these, especially people who are slightly more advanced in their career? I don't know how interested they may or may not be in this, but I would imagine that, almost anybody who's running an organization today has to have some sort of an idea of, well, this is going to be transformational. How do I incorporate that in my business?
So that is a very good question again, because uh, being an AI leader is not just about the technology, right? It's about ensuring that you have for your team, right? It's so important that they have that direction and that strategy that's tied to business outcomes so they know where you're going. It's so important that you have that culture so that they feel safe to learn and to even pairwise learning, to learn and to fail and to grow together. It's so important that you give them the skills and the capabilities. It's your responsibility not only to have the technology and infrastructure, but that your team has the right skills, right, and has the right capabilities so that they can be successful. And it's so important that all your processes and operations pre-AI, they're out the door. You need to redesign your repeatable processes and systemize so that your team understands that, so that they have, it's really redefining their whole workplace environment and giving them that sandbox to play in, and then that toolbox with the right capabilities and the right direction to be successful. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. What do you think macro wise where this is going to all go? Meaning, like right now, a lot of the companies are investing an enormous amounts of money to get these AI tools to people at very, very inexpensive rates. Um, do you think that's going to continue, or what should companies do to kind of like, I don't know, maybe put on some guardrails, fences, anything that they should do? Do they think about the intellectual property issues, or sorry, go ahead.
A thousand percent yes. So uh, it's guardrails are very, very important. And I'll tell you that before I speak of guardrails, in 2025, 80% of all the AI pilots failed, okay?
Mhm.
And they did that because everybody, in my humble opinion, everybody was racing to the finish line, all the big companies, because they didn't want to be left behind, right, to get all the AI infrastructure and capabilities in place. And so that's why it's so important as a leader that at the highest levels you have that strategy and direction and outcomes for your AI system, right? But you raised a good point. That is the guardrails. How do you ensure that you manage that risk? And it's not something that's managed just at the CEO level. It's got to be managed all the way down to that individual contributor. And there's data guardrails, right? The privacy, the protection, the clean data, and that's really your inputs into the AI system. You have to manage risk there. And then you have to have the AI governance, right? That is the outputs. So you want to make sure that you have good outputs, you have compliance taken care of, the federal government taken care of, privacy taken care of, and even that the system is a quality system. So you have to have inputs and outputs for governance. It's got to come from the CEO all the way down and owned and known by the individual contributor. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah, it does. I'd love to drill in on, one of the components that you spoke of right now, and that is the new systems that we said need to be rethought of, and the systems that are part of this. Said in a different way, maybe this is the company's intellectual property. If that's the case, and the AI now, or the AI I'm saying is if it's like some sort of an amorphous thing. But the systems that I put in place that leverage AI in a new, unique, innovative way to be able to provide goods and services in the economy are a competitive differentiator for me. Well, how do I, as a business owner, CEO, or middle manager, protect that which we've created so that it maybe isn't as easily replicatable by other companies and other competitors?
Well, that's a very good question, and even you could start with the early with the LLMs, right? DeepSeek and others, whether we leave them open source or whether we actually make them proprietary,
Yeah.
right? And some of that is incorporated into products. And there's some Fortune 100 companies out there that aren't actually using the LLMs available to all of us today. They're creating their own environment, right? They're creating their own safe bed, right? And so that's how they protect their own have those guardrails as well as protect their own products. And there's some companies that forbid people to use certain AI tools, right? And so you have to, if you're going to use that, you might choose to localize, right, so that you can have that security around it to protect your proprietary assets, right?
Yeah, I think that's super important. It's super important to think a little bit more about how do I leverage my systems and to also think organizationally about these tools as tools because they're not just intelligent beings run amok just yet. Maybe they will be, maybe they won't be. That's not today's problem. But today's problem is how do I leverage this? I don't know that that was the same thing when, say, Lotus 123 came about and Microsoft competed with the spreadsheet.
Right.
I just curious, actually. I know this is kind of a hard pivot in a different direction, but you have some significant formal education. And I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on the landscape of formal education, being that, you used to be able to say, like, why a library is necessary. I could learn everything I want on YouTube. Between YouTube and some form of an AI LLM teacher, I can probably do a pretty good job educating myself. What do you think the role of formal education is going to be over the next, 10, 15, 20 years?
Well, first of all, I think you have to individualize it and you have to say, what is the education that's right for me? Do I want that 4-year university? Do I want that PhD simply for the environment? I think that some institutions are doing really a good job right now of pivoting, of providing this new transformational AI education, this new technology. I also believe that so many of us, like I was not formally educated on AI, right? Everything I learned by putting it in use in the last 2 to 3 years. So I think it really depends on the person. It depends on how the educational institutions continue to adapt. The university that my son's going into in the business school has got a very heavy AI intensive program, even into content marketing and content creation with AI. So I think that the universities are really trying to pivot and they need to pivot, but I also believe, and I even tell my clients, that it is so easy today to find that free learning, and that the best way to learn AI is actually doing it, is actually trying it. So that's a tough question that I don't have a specific answer for, because
Yeah.
I don't even think the institutions today have a direct answer for.
Yeah, I'm very curious actually about the market demand. Meaning, like, if let's say I'm, 18 years old today, and right now I have to think about, well, do I go into a trade where at least my job will be protected to a certain degree? Plumber, electrician, I don't know, iron smelter, call it whatever you want. 20 years ago, that would be unthinkable. Somebody would say that, a blue collar job would be more protected than a white collar job. I think the AI economics have flipped on its head. So the question to me naturally becomes, if I'm investing 20, 60, $100,000 in private university education and coming out with a significant load of debt, whether someone else pays for me or not, um, do
That
is there really going to be an ROI on that education?
That is actually a very good question. It's actually a great question. It's something that I question with one son in college and another son about to start college. And I think that one thing that the college experience does give you is it gives you that bubble, it gives you that environment to have that stepping stone into a new path. I'll tell you just personally that one of my sons wants to use the university to be his test bed because he wants to become an entrepreneur. So while he's in school, in business school, he wants to launch his new business with his new product and in a safe environment so that then he can leapfrog once he gets out. So in that instance, it might be beneficial. But I continue to question, and I've got a PhD, right? And I even told my two sons, you know, you don't, it's your choice whether you go to college or not. It's got to be what's right for you. But that is a huge investment, and with the student loans that students are burdened with after that. So again, my answer is very simple. It really depends on the student and exactly what they want, and what the ROI is for them specifically. Because if you just look at the numbers, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think that if I'm a university today, to your point, I'm very much thinking about some of the ideas you just laid forward. I'm thinking of creating myself as an incubator. I'm thinking of creating myself as a place where young people can, excuse me, network and develop relationships that can
Yes.
last a lifetime. I'm thinking of
Thousands.
myself as creating an alumni association that is not just to benefit the university and donations, but rather becomes a very strong force for business connections and how to, leverage that in the economy. And maybe just maybe that is a value proposition that saves the American higher education, because otherwise, realistically, I mean, if you're just looking for it as a place where you come out with a degree and then you're guaranteed a job, which was pretty much the social promise from all those years ago, like I don't see that happening much more anymore.
I think you raised a very, very good point, and that is your network. So, my graduate network from UVA is so powerful, and any UVA alumni would help any UVA alumni. One of the reasons my son chose the school that he's going to is because of the powerful alumni network, because he wanted to be an entrepreneur, because he knew that he would have that network to carry him through life. So exactly what you said is exactly what I value, and what my son values.
I think that's wonderful because, again, like we're talking about people, and people drive all of these things. So whether it's people learning or people, as you had said at the beginning of the talk, somebody reaching out to a peer or a colleague and inviting them to a cup of coffee and just getting to know each other on a slightly more human level, can help incorporate and inculcate some of the AI items into our lives in a better way. I also love the idea that you had brought about the multi agents running in parallel in order to be able to empower yourself and grow. One other thing that I wanted to just quickly touch about, and leadership is a difficult place to be in, and you're an expert in the field, and I'd love to hear your take on something we talked about a little bit in the pregame, which was disagreements. I think you had said that disagreements are the place where all like growth occurs. And I'm just curious to hear a little bit more if you can expand on that and share for people who are in today's day and age, or at least I was raised with. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. Um, but I don't think that does us very well.
I think disagreements are very healthy. I think disagreements are innovative. I think if you have a team with diverse ideas, put those together and you come up with the best possible outcomes. I'll tell you that one of my friend's sons, she's on the opposite political side of the spectrum from me, and I love having conversations with her because she enlightens me. I'll tell you that one son is on one side. I have another son on the other side of the political spectrum, and they have different conversations, and that enlightens me. And I think it's really, so you learn so much when you hear other perspectives, and all you have to do is you need to bring respect into that recipe, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's on a team with diverse ideas, and even if you have a conflict situation, then you need to understand the perspective of the other person and figure out where they're coming from, because what you do, you're actually enlightened, right? You learn from the conflict, you learn from the disagreement, you learn from the differing ideas, right? You just have to turn that into some type of outcome, achievable outcome. You don't have to agree, you just need to understand, perceive, and respect. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
It does. It does. How would you recommend for our, country's leaders to start implementing some of those ideas?
uh, I will repeat what I said. It's okay to have diverse outcomes and different opinions. I think that RESPECT, I think, was a song, right?
Yes, it
I
was.
think I
It's a
think
good song too.
that that's the piece of the recipe that we are missing. I think that's what are at the national level, at the global level. I think that if we brought respect in more, we would have a lot more positive outcomes. It's okay to disagree. That's fun.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to butcher this quote, but didn't Ben Franklin say something to the effect of the good Lord gave him, 2 ears and one mouth? So you should listen twice as much as speaking. I'm sure I've butchered that quote, but there's something there, I think.
No, yes. So leaders, you know a good leader. Okay, if you're in a room, and let's say that's the leader's sitting at the end of the table. I never sat at the end of the table. I sat in the middle of the table, right? So, but when the leader should speak like 30% of the time, and everybody else should be speaking the rest of the time. The less the leader speaks, right? As long as he's driving outcomes through his presence,
Or she.
then the better the outcome for the team.
Or she.
Or she.
Damn
Yes.
straight.
Or she.
Damn straight. Damn straight. Yeah, I think it's interesting here because we're a little bit at a pivot point, and I think probably the last question that I have, I think, for you before we, start to wrap up the conversation would be, um, you know, it's so easy today to feel like there's reasons to get stuck, whether I'm creating my own obstacles or there really are obstacles in my way. Um, what would be some small things that you would recommend to help people to identify their barriers, identify their blind spots, and take some steps to get unstuck?
Another great question. You're just loaded today. It's the first thing is that being stuck is one of the top three issues that I see from all of my clients and that professionals have because they don't know where to go next. They don't know what to do. And so the first thing I would recommend is I would recommend that you go and buy the book Atomic Habits. Because Atomic Habits is a book that has all these small habits, these atomic habits that allow you to move forward and generate these habits with momentum. For one example is what James Clear, the author, calls habit stacking. So if you have a routine that you do every day, let's say you get morning coffee or you run in the afternoon or you leave work at 5 or whatever that routine is, if you take that one task that you need to start doing and you need to get a routine, you've been dreading it, and you stack it or you do it immediately after that task it's in your routine, then and you do it every day, then it now becomes a habit. So you're taking those small steps to gain that momentum, right? So I have a client who at 5 o'clock when she got off work, she said she was going to spend 30 minutes when she got off work on focusing on her business. I have another client who, when they got done brushing their teeth, right, they were going to focus on what they were going to plan, what they were going to do for their career that day, that morning for the day, like whether it was visibility or whatever it was. So they would use that time to say, I'm going to do this one thing for my career. The other thing that we need to do is we need to shift from outcome-based to identity. So instead of saying, I'm somebody who's always late, you want to step into the identity of who you want to be, and you say, I'm always an on-time person. So it puts you in that right mindset. This is James Clear.
I love that idea. I read the book, but I don't remember that at all. So thank you for resharing that. It's a great perspective. I love it. So sounds like what we're saying is be intentional, develop an idea of where you want to go, start small, create little habits and build on little habits and learn a little bit every day and become a better person every day. I love that idea. Stephanie, this is beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie, if as a final word to our listeners, if they're looking to connect with you, how should they best reach out to you?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Stephanie Hills, PhD. They can book a call with me. I'd love to have a conversation. We can solve a problem in real time. All of these links are on my LinkedIn profile, and I would so look forward to have a conversation.
Amazing. Stephanie, thank you so much. I really appreciate our call today. This was a really lovely conversation, and I hope we get to do this again in the pretty short order. But I would also like to thank our sponsor and suggest that if anybody wants to be a guest on Ventures and Visionaries, and you have something to share, very insightful ideas like Stephanie did today, please reach out to us via info@venturesandvisionaries.com. And we will see if that is a good fit for where we're looking to take the show and some of the insights that you may have. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, because Season 2 of Ventures and Visionaries is sponsored by KJ Technology. It's a technology advisory firm for the lower middle market that helps leadership teams align business goals with technology initiatives, so the plans, the people, and the tech teams are all pulling in the same direction. Their experts provide oversight and design proactive processes and solutions to solve real-world business challenges. For a complimentary consultation, please call 646-556-6500 or email info@kjtechnology.com. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Stephanie. This was a great conversation, and have a great day.